The bell rings, its shrill sound cutting to the hum of lockers slamming shut and feet rushing through the hallway. Jaden Harris hurries to his next class, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets, trying to disappear. It's not the first time today he's felt the stares, but it's the first time one of them comes with words. "Hey, N-word." The shout echoes off the lockers. Jaden freezes, his breath catching in his throat. He doesn't turn around. He can't. The voice is familiar. Zach Carter, the popular senior who's been tormenting him since freshman year. The group of jocks laughs like it's a joke, the kind that gets passed around every morning. But it's never funny. It never is. Jaden's fists clench, the blood rushing to his ears as his body tenses. He can feel the eyes on him, the whispers that follow like shadows, even though none of them speak up. No one ever does. "Don't stand there like a dumbass, Harris. Say something." Zach taunts again, his tone dripping with disdain. Jaden doesn't speak. He's heard the words too many times to count. The sting is familiar now, almost dull, but no less heavy. Instead, he swallows hard and keeps walking. He doesn't look at anyone. He doesn't want to see them staring. Just as he steps into the classroom, his phone buzzes. A notification, #Jaden Harris exposed. His heart drops. No, not again. The school hallway buzzed with the usual noise. Lockers slamming shut, shoes scraping across linoleum floors, and the distant laughter of students finishing their morning routines. Jaden Harris was just trying to make it through the day, hands buried deep in his hoodie pockets, eyes fixed on the ground. If he kept his head down, maybe the whispers would stop. Maybe the stares would fade into the background noise, just like they always did. But today, the whispers felt louder, hotter, more pointed. His gut churned as he walked past a group of jocks near the water fountain. They were talking, sure, but there was something in the way they looked at him, something cruel behind their smiles. He didn't want to look. He didn't want to confirm his suspicions, but he couldn't stop himself. "Hey, N-word." The shout cut through the air, sharp and ugly. Jaden froze. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, drowning out the laughter that followed. He felt the heat of 1,000 eyes on him, like everyone was waiting for him to do something, say something. His palms began to sweat. Zach Carter, the senior who had made Jaden's life a living hell since freshman year, stood in the middle of his group. Zach's mouth twisted into a grin, a look of victory in his eyes. The other boys laughed, too, the sound echoing off the lockers like a pack of hyenas. "Come on, Harris. Don't just stand there like a dumbass." Zach's voice oozed with contempt. "Say something. Defend yourself or whatever." Jaden's jaw tightened, his fists clenching so hard his nails dug into his palms. He wanted to scream, to fight back. But what was the point? Every time he spoke, every time he tried to say something, it was twisted against him. Every word was met with mockery, like he was nothing more than the butt of a joke. "Stop," Jaden said, his voice barely above a whisper. The word felt foreign on his tongue, like it wasn't even meant for him to say. Zach stepped closer, his face inches from Jaden's. "What did you say, punk?" he spat, eyes narrowing. Jaden didn't answer. He couldn't. His body was screaming at him to run, to get out of the suffocating hallway and back into the safety of a world where he didn't have to deal with this every damn day. But he stood there still, like a statue, frozen by the weight of every racist word that had ever been hurled at him. And then the worst part happened. One of Zach's friends pulled out his phone. "Hey, let's record this." Watch the N-word get put in his place. The words cut through the air like a blade. Jaden's stomach dropped. It wasn't enough that Zach and his crew were tormenting him. Now, they were going to make sure the world saw it too. "Please," Jaden whispered, but no one heard him. No one cared. Zach smiled as the camera focused on Jaden's face, his eyes wide and terrified. "Say something to the camera, Harris. Tell everyone how you're too scared to do anything. Tell them how pathetic you are." The sound of the phone's camera clicked, and the video began. The laughter of the group was louder now, almost deafening. Jaden felt like he was drowning. "Why don't you just leave me alone?" he muttered, the words escaping without thought. But Zach only laughed harder. "Leave you alone? Nah, man. You're going to have to deal with this for the rest of your life." Zach's voice was cold, venomous. He took a step back, turned to his friends. This is going to be great. Got to get this online. Make sure everyone knows what kind of joke Harris is. Jaden's legs felt weak beneath him, but he couldn't move. Not now. Not when the whole world was about to see this. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. The noise of the hallway seemed to fade away, replaced by the buzzing in his own skull. He couldn't breathe. Then the bell rang. The sound of it was the loudest thing Jaden had ever heard. It pierced through the noise, sending a wave of relief through him. At least he didn't have to stand here anymore. At least he could escape. But as he turned to walk away, his phone buzzed again. He pulled it out of his pocket, only to see the notification, #Jaden Harris exposed. A cold chill ran down his spine as he stared at the screen. The video, the caption, it was already spreading. Jaden's hands shook as he tapped the video, watching the scene unfold on his phone. His own voice echoed in the background, low and defeated, but it was the words beneath that hit him hardest. Watch the N-word get put in his place. The hallway was empty now, but Jaden stood frozen in place, his heart pounding. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to stop it. The video was out there, and there was no going back. Jaden's world was already spinning out of control, but now it felt like he was drowning. He sat in the back of his third period class, trying to shrink into the worn desk, his eyes glued to the screen of his phone. The video, already going viral, played on loop. The same footage that had sent his stomach into a sickening twist now felt like a permanent scar branded into his memory. He should have put the phone down. He knew that, but he couldn't stop. His heart pounded as comments flew by faster than he could process them. Some were supportive, encouraging him to stay strong. Others, though, were cruel, venomous. Each notification felt like a jab in the ribs. "Yo, Harris, I saw that video." It was Dylan, a kid from his math class. He sat in the desk next to Jaden's, speaking low, but loud enough for him to hear. You okay, man?" Jaden didn't answer. He couldn't. His mouth felt dry, and the pit of his stomach had only deepened since he watched the video earlier. He had been used, humiliated. The whole world had seen him powerless. And now, all the eyes that had always stared at him with disdain were even more eager for his downfall. "I don't know, man," Dylan continued, fidgeting in his seat. "You need to, do something. It's kind of blowing up. People are talking." Jaden's fingers tightened around the phone, the screen flickering in his grip. He wanted to scream, to throw the damn thing out the window, but instead, he just sat there, numb. "Yeah," he finally muttered, his voice thin. "I'm fine." Dylan shrugged, his gaze lingering a second longer than necessary before he returned to his own work. Jaden couldn't focus. He couldn't breathe. Everywhere he looked, it felt like people were whispering behind his back. The tension in the room was suffocating. It wasn't long before the next message popped up, this one from an unfamiliar number. The screen lit up with a simple line. "I saw the video. Let's talk. I can help you." Jaden stared at it, hesitating. Who was this? Was it someone from school, or just some random stranger who wanted to add fuel to the fire? He considered ignoring it, but something gnawed at him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing out a quick response. "How?" The reply came swiftly. "Meet me after school. There's a lot we can do, but we need to act fast." The rest of the class felt like a blur. Jaden couldn't focus on anything, his mind swirling with thoughts of video and the consequences already mounting. How could things have gone this far? How had one single moment spiraled into a nightmare that felt bigger than him? When the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, Jaden didn't waste time. He shoved his things into his backpack, slinging it over his shoulder, and hurried out of the classroom. His heart was pounding in his chest again, the weight of every comment and whisper pressing down on him like an unbearable weight. But there was something in that message, a hint of hope, maybe, or maybe it was desperation. Either way, he couldn't turn back now. The halls were emptier now, students trickling out of classrooms and into the cafeteria, but the air still felt thick with the lingering effects of the video. Some faces avoided his, while others watched him with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. The whispers were louder now, more biting. "Look at him," one student muttered. "He probably asked for it." Jaden's pulse quickened, and he nearly sprinted to the exit, desperate to escape. He made his way toward the parking lot, feeling the weight of every gaze on him, even though no one spoke directly to him. The world around him felt like a cruel stage, and he was the one being paraded in front of it, powerless. He found a spot he was supposed to meet the stranger, at the edge of the lot, near the dumpsters where the overgrown weeds had begun to take over. A figure emerged from the shadows. She was tall, with dark hair tied up in a messy bun, wearing a black hoodie and jeans. Her eyes were focused, intense, as though she was used to navigating tough situations. "You're Jaden, right?" she asked, her voice sharp, yet calming. "Yeah." His voice cracked as he spoke, the first real words he'd said since the incident. It felt like his throat was closing up. "Who are you?" "Maya," she said, her eyes scanning the parking lot before looking back at him. "I saw the video, and I think I can help." Jaden's mind raced. He didn't know whether to feel relief or suspicion. "How?" Maya stepped closer, her gaze firm. "I've been following this kind of stuff for a while. Online activism. People like you, like me, people who've had enough. This isn't just a school issue. It's bigger than that. You got a chance to turn this into something." Jaden blinked, confused. "Turn what into something?" "Your story. Your voice," she replied. "We can make sure Zach and his buddies don't get away with this. We can expose them, make sure they're held accountable. But it'll take more than just sitting back and waiting for someone else to fix it." Jaden shook his head. "I don't know, Maya. What if it makes things worse? What if I'm just making everything worse?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, showing him a collection of tweets, posts, and news articles. "This is the reality of how things work now. People see what happens. The world reacts. And you, Jaden, you can be the one to make them listen. You've already got the platform, the attention. All you need now is to take control of the narrative." Jaden looked at the screen. His heart wavered between fear and something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time, the possibility of fighting back. "You really think I can do this?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "I know you can," Maya said. She stepped back, giving him space to think. "It won't be easy, but you're not alone in this. We'll make sure you're not." Jaden stood there, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts. What did he have to lose? The chapter ends with Jaden looking at Maya, his fingers trembling as he clutched his phone. The decision weighed heavily on him. Could he truly fight back? Would it even make a difference? And most importantly, could he handle what came next? Jaden walked home in a daze, his feet carrying him along the familiar path to the neighborhood, but his mind was far away. Maya's words echoed in his head. "You can be the one to make them listen." He kept replaying the idea of fighting back, of turning the situation into something bigger than the humiliation that had nearly consumed him. But how? How could he possibly make a difference when all he felt was small and powerless? The video of Zach and his friends mocking him, mocking his very existence, was out there, spreading like wildfire. What could one kid do against a whole system of people who thought it was okay to treat him like this? His phone buzzed again, snapping him out his thoughts. Another notification, another comment on the video. This time, it was from a name he didn't recognize. "You've got this, man. Don't let them win." It wasn't much, but it was something. The support from strangers felt surreal, almost like it wasn't even meant for him. He had a hard time believing it was real, but it was there, sitting on his screen, a glimmer of hope in the flood of hate. He felt the pull, the faintest whisper of resistance. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe he could do this. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Maya. "Meet me at my place later. We'll talk strategy." Jaden's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment where he either stayed silent, stayed small, or took control of his life. His thumb hovered over the message. A part of him was terrified. What if things got worse? What if he was just setting himself up for more pain? But another part, the part that had been buried deep inside him for so long, was ready to step forward, ready to take a stand. By the time he got home, the thought of facing his parents and their questions made his stomach knot. They didn't know. Not really. They knew the basics, of course. His being harassed, his being the target of some dumb jocks. But they didn't know how deep it went, how it had eaten away at him from the inside for years. His mother was at the kitchen table, flipping through a magazine. When she saw him enter, she looked up, her expression softening. "Hey, baby, you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Jaden nodded, though he wasn't sure he could convince even himself. "Yeah, just tired." She raised an eyebrow, not by it for a second. "Tired, huh? Something happened at school today." He hesitated. The truth, the whole truth, was sitting there, just under his skin, ready to spill out. But Jaden didn't know how to say it. How could he? He couldn't even explain it to himself. There was no way to put into words the suffocating weight of what had happened. "Not really," he muttered, shaking his head. "I'll be fine. Just, it's a lot, you know." His mom gave him a long, searching look, her brow furrowing. "You sure? You know you can talk to me, right?" Jaden forced a smile. "Yeah, Mom. I'm good." He wanted to leave it at that, but something inside him wouldn't let him. She sighed, standing up and walking over to him. "Jaden, I know how tough high school can be, but you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Jaden's throat tightened. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate her trying to comfort him. It just didn't feel like it was enough. The support was kind, but it was also distant, like she was watching him from the outside, without fully understanding the depth of what he was facing. "I know, Mom. I know." She hugged him tightly, and for a moment, he allowed himself to rest in the comfort of her arms. But when she pulled back, her eyes searched his face again, concern still lingering. "Promise me you'll let me know if something's bothering you," she said, her voice softer now. Jaden swallowed hard and nodded. "I promise." As he retreated to his room, the weight of her words followed him, but so did the weight of everything else. The growing support online, Maya's offer, and the fear that had taken root deep in his chest. He knew he couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. The battle wasn't just with Zach anymore. It was with the silence that had kept him invisible for so long. The moment he closed the door behind him, he pulled out his phone. He typed out a quick message to Maya. "I'll be there." Later that evening, Jaden found himself standing in front of Maya's house, his hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets, the cold air biting at his skin. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves swirling inside him. He wasn't sure what to expect. Was this all just some weird trap, or was Maya really the ally she seemed to be? When he rang the doorbell, Maya opened the door almost immediately, as if she had been waiting. She smiled at him, but there was no warmth in it. Instead, it was sharp, determined. "You ready?" she asked, stepping aside to let him in. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I guess." The inside of her house was quieter than he expected, almost too quiet. It felt like a place where big things were always being planned in secret, things that could change the world. Maya led him to the living room, where a laptop sat open on the coffee table, several tabs open with news articles, social media posts, and what appeared to be an editing program. "I've been doing some research," Maya said, sitting across from him and motioning for him to take a seat. "You're not the first person to deal with this kind of thing, Jaden. You're not the first to be used like this. But you're also not alone. And you got something that a lot of people don't: access to a platform. People are already listening." Jaden sat down slowly, trying to wrap his mind around her words. "I don't know, Maya. This is all too much. What if it makes things worse?" She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "It will be hard. People will try to tear you down. But if you stay quiet, if you let them control the narrative, you lose. You can fight back, Jaden. You can expose the truth. We just need to make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Jaden felt his heart race. The stakes were real now. This wasn't just about school anymore. It was about standing up for himself, for his dignity, for something more. He took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do it." Maya's smile this time was different. It was fierce. "Good. We'll make sure the world hears you." The chapter ends with Jaden nodding, the first spark of hope flaring inside him as he realized that this wasn't just about defending himself anymore. It was about changing everything. Jaden sat at Maya's kitchen table, staring at the laptop screen as the cursor blinked in front of him. The empty white space of the social media post stared back at him, waiting for something to fill it. He swallowed, his throat dry, as he thought about what to say. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Maya, who had been glued to the screen next to him, didn't wait for him to start typing. "Just speak from the heart," she said, her voice low but firm. "Tell people what's really going on. You're not just some victim here. You're a person who deserves to be heard." He glanced at her, unsure. What if they don't listen? What if they just see me as another kid trying to get attention? "They'll listen," Maya said, her eyes never leaving the screen. "This isn't just about your story. It's about making sure people realize what's happening to you isn't an isolated incident. This is about standing up to the people who think they can get away with it because no one speaks up." Jaden looked back at the screen, taking a deep breath. The weight of his next words felt heavy, like they might change everything. His fingers slowly began to type. "My name is Jaden Harris, and I'm tired of being quiet." He paused, reading the words over and over. This wasn't just a post. It was his first real declaration, the beginning of something bigger than himself. "I don't know if I can do this," he muttered, his voice barely audible. Maya leaned forward, her face intense. "You already are doing it. You just have to keep going." Jaden felt his heart pounding as he typed more, finding his rhythm as he shared his story. The constant stares, the slurs whispered behind his back, the cruelty disguised as jokes, the bullying that had become an everyday part of his life for years. But this time, it wasn't just about the pain. It was about calling out the system that had allowed it to continue. He knew if he let fear dictate his actions, this moment would pass just like every other one before it. "They don't get to control the narrative anymore," he wrote. "I'm done being silent." When he hit the post button, Jaden felt a strange mix of dread and liberation. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the notifications began, one after another, flooding his screen. It was overwhelming, and for a brief second, he regretted it. What had he done? Was he really ready for this? But then, the messages started coming in. "You're not alone. Thank you for speaking up. This is why we need to stand together." It wasn't much, at least not yet, but it was enough to shift the air around him. His phone buzzed constantly, each new notification a small reminder that he wasn't invisible anymore. "See," Maya said, sitting back in her chair with a satisfied look. "This is just the beginning." Jaden nodded, swallowing hard. I don't know what comes next." Maya tapped a few keys on her laptop. "Next, we keep this momentum going. We'll gather everything. Testimonies, videos, proof of what Zach and his friends have been doing. And when the time's right, we expose them all." Jaden's chest tightened at the thought. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everything. The weight of this truth, the weight of finally fighting back, felt like something far bigger than a single post. "I don't want to just expose them, Maya," Jaden said quietly. "I want to make sure they never get away with it. This isn't just about school. This is about everyone who's been pushed aside because they didn't have a voice." Maya's eyes softened for the first time since they started. "I get it, but you don't do it alone. You've got people now. We've got your back." Jaden felt a strange warmth at her words. It wasn't just Maya. He wasn't alone in this fight anymore. And maybe, just maybe, he could do this. The next few days felt like a blur. Jaden's post had gone viral, faster than he ever could have imagined. The hashtag Justice for Jaden spread like wildfire across social media, picking up steam with every passing hour. People from different states, even countries, sent messages of support. Some shared their own stories of racism. Others spoke out about their own experiences with bullying. For the first time in a long time, Jaden didn't feel like the only one fighting. He felt like part of something bigger. But with the support came the hate. The first hateful comment was easy to ignore. "Just shut up and take your punishment like everyone else, loser." Then it was followed by more. "Crying over nothing. Go back to where you came from." And even worse, "You deserve it. You're just another angry black kid. But Jaden wasn't fazed. Not anymore. Every hateful message only fueled a fire inside him. He had decided he wasn't going to let them silence him. He wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. They wanted to break him, but he was stronger than that. Maya was there every step of the way, guiding him through each comment, each message. She taught him how to handle the wave of attention, how to rise above the trolls and focus on the people who truly mattered, those who supported him, those who saw him for what he was, a person deserving of respect, of dignity. By the end of the week, Jaden's story had reached local news stations. He had become the face of the fight against bullying, a symbol of resistance against the systemic racism that so many tried to ignore. There were still people who doubted him, who tried to discredit his experience, but Jaden didn't care anymore. He had made a choice, to speak up, to stand tall, no matter the cost. And as the weeks passed, he started to see change. His school administrators began to take notice. The principal had issued a statement, promising to investigate the incident. The administration, who had previously turned a blind eye, now faced growing pressure from the community. People were starting to listen. His voice was being heard. But even as things began to change, the scars of what had happened remained. The video of Zach's cruelty still haunted him, replaying in his mind every time he closed his eyes. The fear, the humiliation, it never fully went away. But Jaden knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to back down. The chapter ends with Jaden sitting on his bed, staring at his phone, the notifications still pouring in. He had taken the first step. There was no turning back now. The battle was just beginning, and Jaden was ready to fight. The morning after Jaden's post went viral, he woke to a flurry of messages. At first, he thought they were more words of encouragement, but as his eyes focused on the screen, he quickly realized the reality of what he'd stepped into. His phone buzzed nonstop, and it didn't take long for him to realize the ugliness of the world he had exposed. Shut up and stop playing the victim. Maybe if you weren't so sensitive, people wouldn't treat you like that. Attention-seeking fool. But the one that hit him the hardest was from someone he hadn't expected to see, Zach Carter. His message was short, but it stung. You're a joke. Keep playing the race card. See where it gets you. Jaden stared at the screen, his stomach churning. It wasn't just Zach anymore. The video had given him a platform, but also opened a floodgate of hate he hadn't been ready for. His fingers trembled as he scrolled through the endless barrage of insults. Some were subtle, others were not. There were even fake memes made from stills of the video, mocking his pain, his anger. Maya's words echoed in his mind. This is just the beginning. But Jaden wasn't sure if he was ready for it. The weight of the backlash felt like 1,000 eyes on him, judging him, waiting for him to break. He pulled his hood over his head, sat on the edge of his bed, and tried to steady his breath. It wasn't long before the school called. The principal's voice on the phone was calm, too calm. Jaden, we need to talk about your post. You've stirred up quite a lot of attention, and some of it's negative. We're concerned about the environment at school. Jaden's heart sank. The principal wasn't calling to say he was proud of Jaden for standing up. He wasn't offering support. Instead, he was worried about the disruption Jaden's actions had caused. Some students are feeling unsafe because of the video. There are concerns that this will escalate into something more violent. The principal's voice was measured, professional. We need you to come in and talk. There are consequences to how this is being handled, Jaden. Consequences? Jaden's hands clenched into fists. He couldn't believe it. Instead of addressing the real problem, the racism that was happening every day, they were worried about the aftermath, about the discomfort of the students who had caused the harm. I don't need to come in, Jaden said, his voice sharp. You should be worried about what's going on in this school. Not me. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Jaden, this is a serious matter. If you continue down this path, there could be consequences for your actions as well. You need to understand the gravity of what you're doing. Jaden's chest tightened. I understand it perfectly. At school the next day, the atmosphere was tense. The air felt thick with anticipation, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to break. The kids who supported him were quieter now, their words uncertain. His friends, if they could even be called that, kept their distance. Hey, Harris, One of the jocks called out as Jaden walked down the hall, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Nice little attention stunt you pulled there. You feel good about yourself now. Jaden didn't stop walking, didn't even look in his direction. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing him crack. He had learned a long time ago that silence was often the best response to cruelty. But as he walked by, he felt the weight of the looks, the judgment, the whispers trailing behind him like a shadow he couldn't escape. It was clear the school was not on his side. They'd made it plain that the disruption he had caused by speaking out was more of a problem than the actual racism that had taken place. There were whispers from teachers, too. At least two had approached him in the hallways, telling him they understood what he was going through, but it was all surface-level sympathy. He could feel it, the uncomfortable way they glanced around, the way they waited for him to say something so they could quickly turn away, as if his very presence made them uncomfortable. "Hey," Maya said, catching up to him after lunch. "You all right?" Jaden didn't respond right away. He wanted to tell her he was fine, that he was dealing with it. But the truth was he wasn't. He had felt alone for so long, and now it was worse than ever. The attention had shifted from supporting him to blaming him for causing trouble. The school, the students, even some of his own family, everyone had an opinion about what he should or shouldn't do. "Jaden, they can't silence you," Maya continued, her voice firm. "This is just what happens when you start rocking the boat. You have to stay strong. You've got people on your side, real people, not these guys." Jaden nodded, but it didn't make him feel any better. Real people. He thought of the messages of support, the strangers who'd reached out, but they felt distant, far away. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," Jaden said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have to," Maya insisted. "This is bigger than you, bigger than what they're saying. You've already made an impact. We just need to keep pushing." The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and even a visit from a local news station. The school would try to control the narrative, and Jaden's post had become the focal point of their campaign to smooth things over. They even suggested he take down the post, for the sake of the school's reputation. But Jaden wasn't going to do that. At lunch one day, a few students approached him. They were mostly from his classes, students who had been silent until now. "Hey, Jaden," one of them said quietly, "we saw the video, and we're with you. Just wanted to say that." It was awkward, hesitant, but it was also real. Jaden nodded, a small flicker of warmth rising in his chest. "I appreciate it," he said. "But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us. It's about people getting away with shit like this because no one says anything." The group fell silent for a moment, each one of them glancing at the others as if weighing his words. It was a small moment, but it was the first time in a long time Jaden didn't feel completely isolated. The chapter ends with Jaden walking down the hall, head held high despite the weight of the world on his shoulders. The back and forth, the support and the hate, was exhausting. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going to back down now. Zach Carter's cruel words rang in his mind. "You're a joke." Maybe Zach thought he had broken Jaden, but he was wrong. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Jaden woke up the next morning to a different kind of silence. His phone wasn't buzzing with new notifications like it had in the past few days. Instead, it was quiet, eerily so. The whole world seemed to have taken a breath, waiting for the next move. The thing was, Jaden wasn't sure what his next move was. He had taken the first step, shared his truth, and it had set everything in motion. Now, he felt like he was just standing still, waiting for something to change. He pulled his hoodie over his head and grabbed his phone, unlocking it. The first message was from Maya. She had been in touch almost every day since the post went live, giving him advice and keeping him grounded. This time, though, her message was different. There was urgency in her words. "I have something. Meet me after school." Jaden's heart skipped. He didn't know what Maya had uncovered, but he knew it was something important. He couldn't ignore it, not when everything had already been set in motion. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jaden's teachers were unusually quiet, as if they were all waiting for him to speak up, for him to give them the reason they could finally blame him. There was no sympathy anymore, just a cold gaze of indifference. The tension in the school was palpable, like the air had thickened, heavy with the expectation of the next big thing. Maya texted him again during lunch. "We got everything we need." Jaden didn't even have time to ask what she meant. His stomach twisted with a mix of excitement and fear. Was this it? Was this the moment when everything changed? After school, he found Maya standing outside the gates of the school. Her posture was tense, her eyes scanning the parking lot as if she was waiting for something. He walked over, trying to act like he wasn't scared out of his mind. "You good?" he asked, his voice a little more strained than he intended. Maya nodded, her expression serious. She pulled out her phone and handed it to him without saying a word. On the screen was a video, a grainy clip from a few weeks ago, something Jaden had never seen before. It was a recording from a party. Jaden recognized some of the faces immediately. Zach Carter and his group of friends, the same ones who had tormented him for years. They were laughing, sitting around a table, but it wasn't just the laughter that made Jaden's stomach churn. It was what they were saying. "Man, I swear that kid Harris thinks he's better than everyone. He's just like every other black kid, lazy and entitled. Thinks we owe him something." Zach's voice rang out, dripping with venom. The camera zoomed in, showing his face as he leaned in, a smirk spreading across his features. "Man, he's not even worth the air we breathe. One day, I'm going to put that N-word in his place. Show him who's boss." The camera zoomed out to reveal the group laughing, egging each other on. The laughter felt hollow, cruel. Jaden stared at the screen, his body going cold. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This was proof. This was undeniable. All the times Zach and his friends had humiliated him. All the times they'd laughed at his expense. It was all here, right in front of him. Maya looked at him, her voice calm but firm. "We've got more, too." Other students came forward with their own stories. "We're ready to expose them, Jaden. All of them." Jaden swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't know what to say. All he had ever wanted was for someone to believe him, for someone to see the truth of what had happened. And now, here it was, laid out in front of him. The evidence was irrefutable. He turned to Maya, his mind racing. "What do we do now?" "Now," Maya said, a small, determined smile playing on her lips. "Now, we make sure everyone knows the truth. We don't let them get away with this. Not anymore." The next few days were a whirlwind of action. Maya had contacted a local journalist she knew, someone who had been following the story from start. They met with a journalist and showed them the video, the testimonies, and everything they had collected. The journalist agreed to cover the story, but there was one catch. They had to be ready for the fallout. "You can't back down now, Jaden," the journalist warned him. "You've got the power, but with that power comes a price. Are you ready for it?" Jaden didn't hesitate. "I'm ready." The article went live that evening. The headline screamed the truth. Local high school students caught in racist rant, a reckoning for Zach Carter and his friends. The story detailed everything: Zach and his friends' long history of racist behavior, the bullying of Jaden Harris, and the video that exposed it all. The piece included Jaden's statement and Maya's interviews with other students who had been affected by the toxic culture at the school. The reaction was immediate. Social media erupted, with hashtags like #JusticeForJaden and #ExposeTheBullies trending across the country. Support flooded in from all corners: strangers, celebrities, activists. People were demanding that Zach and his friends face consequences for their actions. But it wasn't just the support that caught everyone's attention. It was a video, the evidence that couldn't be ignored. The school didn't take long to react. Within hours of the article's release, the principal issued a statement. They suspended Zach and his friends pending an investigation. It was a start, but Jaden knew it wasn't enough. He wasn't going to let them sweep this under the rug, not like they always did with every other incident. Maya was there every step of the way, guiding him through the interviews, the press conferences, the countless phone calls. The pressure was building, but Jaden didn't falter. He couldn't afford to. This was his moment to speak for everyone who had ever been silenced, for everyone who had ever been pushed to the margins because of the color of their skin. But even as the fight began to feel like it was moving in the right direction, Jaden couldn't escape the toll it was taking on him. The messages were still there, both the supportive ones and the hateful ones. His phone never stopped buzzing. And behind the action, the noise, there was always that small voice in the back of his mind, questioning everything. Was this worth it? Was the fight really changing anything? For now, though, all Jaden could do was keep moving forward. The truth had been exposed. Zach and his friends had nowhere to hide anymore. And Jaden, he was finally being heard. The chapter ends with Jaden standing in front of a news camera, his face calm, but inside, his mind was racing. There was still more to do, more to fight for. But for the first time in a long time, Jaden felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for everyone who had ever been pushed down and ignored. He was done being silent. And this time, they were listening. The days that followed the article were a blur, a whirlwind of headlines, interviews, and public outcry. The national attention Jaden had received was overwhelming, and for the first time, it felt like the whole world was watching him. The reality of the situation hit him harder than he expected. There was no going back now. He had spoken out, and the fallout was both swift and relentless. At school, things had escalated quickly. Zach and his friends, despite being suspended, still had their supporters. There were still whispers in the halls. Still students who sided with the jocks, who claimed Jaden had brought this all on himself. They called him a troublemaker, a liar, a drama queen. Some even mocked him by retweeting the old video, poking fun at his pain like it was just another joke to laugh at. But there were others who spoke out for him now. Students who had seen the bullying, who had kept quiet for too long. Their voices were loud and unified, and it gave Jaden a small sense of hope. He wasn't fighting alone anymore. Don't let them win, man. A guy named Mark, someone Jaden barely knew, said to him one afternoon in the hallway, "I've seen it. What they did to you, they need to pay." It was small moments like this, these glimpses of real support, that kept Jaden moving forward. But for every supportive voice, there were dozens more filled with hatred and disbelief. His stomach churned every time he saw a comment online, every time a new video or meme was shared. Some people simply didn't get it, and the people who didn't get it were the loudest. The school board finally called a meeting to address the situation, and Jaden knew it was going to be a turning point. He had been told about the meeting days before, and although he had expected it, the pressure was unbearable. The thought of standing in front of the administrators, the people who had done nothing while he'd been tormented, filled him with dread. But he knew he couldn't back down now, not when he had come this far. Maya drove him to the meeting. The car ride was quiet, except for the low hum of the radio. Maya's eyes were focused on the road, but Jaden could feel her determination, even in the silence. She wasn't just in this for the spotlight. She was in this because she believed in the cause, in the change that needed to happen. She had been with him from the very beginning, pushing him forward when he wanted to quit. "You got this," Maya said, glancing over at him for a moment. "Don't let them intimidate you. You've already won. It's just a matter of making sure they know it." Jaden nodded, but the fear still lingered. What would the school board say? Would they actually take action, or would they just brush everything aside again? He had no answers, only the hope that things would be different this time. The meeting room was filled with the usual faces, administrators, teachers, parents, and a few local reporters. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with unease. Jaden sat at a table near the front, his hands folded in his lap, trying to steady his breathing. He was wearing the same hoodie he'd worn during his viral post, the one that had become his symbol of defiance. One by one, people spoke. The principal was up first, making his typical statements about the school's commitment to diversity and anti-bullying initiatives. He offered vague words about the investigation into Zach and his friends. Nothing concrete, nothing that would make Jaden feel like anything had truly changed. When Jaden was called to speak, the room fell silent. He could feel every eye on him, every whispered comment behind his back. The weight of their judgment made his stomach turn, but he didn't back down. He walked to the podium and looked at the faces before him, the same faces that had ignored his pain for so long. He spoke slowly but with purpose. "I've been called every name in the book. I've been humiliated and bullied for years by people who think it's okay to treat me like less than human. Jaden began, his voice steady, but thick with emotion. But I'm not here to be their scapegoat anymore. I'm not here to let them get away with it. He paused, making sure to look around the room. You can't hide behind policies or empty words. You can't pretend this isn't a problem. This is about accountability. It's about making sure that when kids like Zach and his friend hurt others, they don't just get away with it because it's just a joke. Jaden could see some of the administrators shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The uncomfortable silence that followed only fueled his determination. I'm not asking for sympathy, he continued, his voice louder now, stronger. I'm asking for justice. For every person who's been pushed down, told to shut up, or made to feel less than human because of who they are. I'm not the only one who's had to go through this. As he spoke, he could feel the eyes on him begin to change. Some were still dismissive, but others, those who had been silent for far too long, were starting to listen. Jaden wasn't sure how much of a difference he was making, but at least he knew they could no longer ignore him. Later that night, the school board released a statement. It wasn't much. They promised to reassess the school's anti-bullying policy and investigate further into the incident with Zach and his friends. Zach was officially expelled, and his friends were given a temporary suspension pending review. The response felt like it was meant to silence the growing outrage, but Jaden knew better. It wasn't enough. He could feel the weight of the victory and the sting of its incompleteness. The battle was far from over. The next day at school, the response was mixed. Some students congratulated him. Others stayed silent, and some still laughed behind his back, as if his fight wasn't real. But there was one moment, one small victory, that stood out. As Jaden walked down the hallway after class, he saw a group of students, mostly unfamiliar faces, standing together in solidarity. One of them, a girl from his history class, stepped forward. "Hey, Jaden," she said, her voice hesitant. "We just wanted to say, we're with you. We're not going to let them keep doing this to you." For the first time in weeks, Jaden smiled, a small but real smile. This wasn't over. The fight was just beginning. The chapter ended with Jaden standing outside the school, looking up at the sky. The world was shifting, slowly but surely. He still had a long road ahead of him, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path, and whatever came next, he was ready for it. Jaden couldn't stop thinking about the day before. After the school board meeting, the flood of emotions had hit him all at once. Relief, fear, hope, and even a touch of anger. It was the anger that lingered long after the meeting ended and the school day was over. They had finally done something. Yes, Zach was expelled. His friends were suspended. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Jaden knew better than to expect a perfect resolution, but the decision left him with a bitter taste. It was a small victory, but it didn't erase the years of torment, the constant fear, or the silent suffering of countless others. The school's empty promises of change felt hollow. They had handled the situation like they were just crossing off a box on a list. They had dealt with him, but the system that had allowed it all to happen still stood. The cracks in that system hadn't been fixed. They'd just been papered over. But that night, something inside Jaden shifted. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how this moment, this small victory, had become something far bigger than he could have imagined. He'd spoken up. He'd refused to stay quiet. And in doing so, he'd sparked something that wasn't going away. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all the people who had to live in silence, just as he had. It was about giving them the chance to be seen, heard, and believed. The idea was terrifying, but it was clear now. There was more to this fight than he'd ever realized. The next morning, Jaden woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He pulled on the same hoodie he had worn to the school board meeting, the one that had become his shield. The world had already seen him at his lowest. So he wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't going to let fear dictate his actions. At school, things were quieter. The atmosphere felt less tense, but still charged with the aftermath of everything that had unfolded. Jaden couldn't help but notice the students who now looked at him differently. Some seemed almost apologetic, but others still avoided him like he was radioactive. It was a strange balance, the push and pull of support and disdain. But what caught his attention most were the people who were now stepping forward. Students from other grades, even ones he didn't recognize, began to talk to him. They wanted to share their own stories. They were finally speaking up. It was the beginning of something. And Maya was there just as she had always been. She was the one who had never stopped pushing him when he wanted to give up, the one who had seen the spark in him before he could even see it himself. She was the one who knew that this wasn't just about fighting back. It was about forging a path for others to follow. Jaden looked around. Maya said one day after school, her eyes scanning the faces of students walking past them. "This is what you've done. You've made them see." Jaden glanced around the courtyard, the same place where he had spent countless hours walking alone, trying to disappear. Now it was different. There were whispers, yes, but there was something else, a shift in the air, a quiet acknowledgement that something had changed. People were talking about the things that had always been hidden beneath the surface, about racism, about bullying, about how long they had all been silent. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He couldn't just go back to the way things had been. This was bigger than him, bigger than the school. It was about the system, the culture that allowed people to get away with things like this, to make others feel small, to tear them down. "I've been thinking," Jaden said, looking up at Maya, a new sense of conviction in his voice. "It's not just about standing up for myself. It's about speaking up for everyone who doesn't have a voice, for everyone who's been pushed down and ignored." Maya smiled, a proud gleam in her eyes. "Exactly. You see it now." Over the next few weeks, Jaden found himself speaking at more events, rallies, town halls, even in front of the news cameras. People were paying attention. He had a platform, and it wasn't just for him. He became the voice for so many others, using his experience to advocate for change, for accountability, for justice. It wasn't easy. The messages, both supportive and hateful, continued to flood his phone. But with each new message, Jaden grew stronger. There were moments when he questioned himself, when the weight of the responsibility felt too heavy. But then he'd think of the students who had reached out, of the stories they shared with him, and he knew he couldn't stop. He couldn't be silent anymore. Maya was always there, helping him craft his speeches, teaching him how to navigate the media, and how to make his message clear without letting the trolls distract him. She was a quiet force behind him, the one who reminded him why he couldn't back down. One evening, as Jaden sat at his desk, scrolling through messages of support, he felt something shift inside him. A sense of peace, a sense that he was doing something important. He wasn't just fighting for his own justice anymore. He was fighting for everyone. The pain, the trauma, it still lingered in his chest. But it wasn't the only thing defining him now. He had made a difference, and he was going to keep making one. He closed his laptop, standing up and looking out his window. The world outside had changed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't over. But the fight was only just beginning. And Jaden, for the first time in his life, felt ready to fight it. The chapter ended with Jaden walking outside, the sky stretching out before him, vast and open. There were still challenges ahead, still battles to be fought, but now he knew he wasn't alone. He had found his voice, and no one could take that away from him. He was ready for whatever came next. He wasn't just Jaden Harris anymore. He was a symbol of resistance, and he wasn't stopping now. The days after Jaden's last public speech were a blur of phone calls, news coverage, and meetings. His story had ignited something that couldn't be stopped, no matter how much some people wished it would. The media had picked it up, and suddenly, Jaden wasn't just a kid who had been bullied for years. He was a symbol of resistance. His face was on every news outlet, his name in every social media post. But for every positive comment, there were still the angry, hateful ones. For every person who spoke up in support of Jaden, there were others who tried to discredit him, to twist his story. They labeled him an attention seeker, accused him of lying, and dismissed the pain he had gone through. The online hate felt like a storm constantly at his back, but Jaden stood firm. The truth was on his side. Jaden didn't know what the outcome would be when everything was said and done. Would Zach and his friends face real consequences? Would the school finally change? Would people start to understand the depth of the problem? Or would this be another fleeting moment of outrage, forgotten once the next news cycle began? One thing he knew for certain, he wasn't going to stop pushing for answers. It wasn't until the end of the week that the school board made its final move. Jaden had been on edge for days, waiting for the investigation to conclude. He had heard rumors. Zach and his friends had tried to fight back with their own stories, tried to paint themselves as victims of Jaden's false narrative. But this time it didn't work. The truth was on Jaden's side, and it was clear to anyone who looked closely. The board's official statement came in the form of an email from the superintendent. Jaden's heart raced as he opened it, the words on the screen blurring together as he read through it. After thorough investigation, it has been determined that Zach Carter and his associates engaged in a pattern of racist behavior and harassment towards fellow students, including but not limited to Jaden Harris. As a result, they will be expelled from the district effective immediately. In addition, a new anti-bullying and diversity initiative will be implemented across all schools in the district. The district is committed to providing a safe and inclusive environment for all students. Jaden stared at the screen for a long time, the words slowly sinking in. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This wasn't just a suspension that would allow Zach to come back and continue his reign of terror. This was real. Zach and his friend were gone, and the school, the institution, was finally being forced to change. For a moment, Jaden didn't know whether to feel relieved or overwhelmed. Justice had been served, but at a cost. The scars of this battle ran deep, and it wasn't just about getting Zach expelled. It was about what came next, about making sure this never happened again, not just him, but anyone else who had ever felt small, unseen, or unheard. The next day at school, there was a strange sense of anticipation in the air. Some students, those who had been supportive, spoke to him with a kind of reverence, as though he had somehow become untouchable. Others, those who had sided with Zach, avoided him altogether, their silence as damning as their words had been before. Jaden walked through the halls, his head held high. He had done it. He had forced them to listen. Zach Carter, the guy who had tormented him for years, was gone, and that felt like a victory in itself. But there was still something missing. The school had made the right decision, but Jaden couldn't help but wonder if it would stick. Would the culture really change? Would the next kid who stood up be met with the same resistance? Or would they face a different fate, one where they didn't have to fight so hard just to be seen? The weeks that followed felt like a slow unraveling of the world Jaden had once known. It wasn't a sudden shift. It was more like a gradual turning of the tide, something he could feel happening but couldn't quite put into words. The school, for the first time in his memory, began to feel different. The halls weren't as oppressive. The whispers, the stares, those things still existed, but they were quieter, less pervasive. Zach's absence had left a hole, but it wasn't one that had gone unnoticed. People were starting to ask questions, real questions, about the culture in the school, about why things like this had been allowed to fester for so long. Jaden had been the catalyst, but it was the conversations that followed that felt like the real victory. He had kept his head high throughout the storm, but it wasn't until after the dust settled that he realized how tired he truly was. The fight had taken its toll, physically, emotionally, mentally, even now. As he walked the halls, the pressure of what happened still weighed on his shoulders. But there was something else too, a quiet confidence, a sense of power that he hadn't known he had before. It was a Friday afternoon when Jaden met Maya on the steps outside the school. They had become inseparable in the past few weeks, their bond solidified by their shared experience. Maya had been there from the very beginning, when Jaden had felt like he was alone. She had never wavered in her belief that they could make a difference. And now, with everything that had happened, he understood why. "Hey," Jaden said, sitting down beside her, "you ever stop to think about how far we've come?" Maya smiled, her eyes sparkling in the afternoon sunlight. "I try not to. It's easy that way. Keeps me from getting too nostalgic for all the hard work." Jaden laughed. It felt good to laugh. For the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't forced. "No, seriously, I don't think I would have made it through this without you. You've pushed me to be stronger than I thought I could be," Jaden admitted. Maya shrugged, not one to take credit. "It wasn't just me, Jaden. You did the hardest part. You stood up. You spoke your truth." He nodded, his smile fading slightly. I don't know if I could have done it without you. But it's not over, right? Maya's expression grew serious. No, it's not over. Not by a long shot. The school was starting to implement the anti-bullying programs they had promised. There was still a lot of work to be done. Systemic issues couldn't be solved with a few speeches and one policy change. But it was a start. For the first time, there was a sense that the culture was shifting. Students were talking, confronting the uncomfortable truths they had avoided for so long. Jaden had become a symbol, one he wasn't sure he was entirely prepared for. But he knew one thing. He couldn't walk away now. Not when so many people were counting on him. That night, Jaden sat alone in his room, his phone buzzing with messages. He had become somewhat a local hero. News outlets still covered his story, and messages of support came from all over. But Jaden had always been one to shy away from attention. Now, however, he realized something important. The attention wasn't about him. It was about the message he carried. The message of resistance, of standing up no matter the cost. He opened his phone and looked through the comments. Some were still hateful. Some still called him a liar. But there were more now, so many more that told him he had done the right thing.